Amara sat by the window, staring into the twilight sky as the last rays of the sun dipped below the horizon. Her heart felt heavy, but it was a weight she had grown used to over the years. She had been married to Luca for 3 years now, but she had known all along that his heart wasn't hers to begin with. It belonged to Elena, his first love, a woman he could never forget. The marriage between Luca and Amara had been arranged by their families, a union made for convenience and tradition rather than love. Amara, a gentle and selfless soul, had accepted her fate without complaint. She loved Luca in silence, hoping one day he would come to see her for the woman she was. But she also knew of the love that had once consumed him and Elena, a love that had never truly died. In the beginning, Amara had tried to be the perfect wife. She cared for Luca, attended to his needs, and made their home warm and welcoming. But her efforts were met with cold indifference. Luca barely looked at her, his thoughts always elsewhere. Amara knew where. Elena had re-entered his life not long after their marriage, and it wasn't long before Luca began seeing her again, under the guise of old friends reconnecting. The first time Amara realized Luca was cheating on her, she felt as though the world had crumbled beneath her feet. She had found a message on his phone, words exchanged between him and Elena, filled with the passion and longing that Amara had never received. Her heart shattered into 1,000 pieces, but she said nothing. She confronted him only with her silence, and he responded with coldness. Luca's betrayal wasn't just in his actions, it was in how he treated Amara after. He grew distant, dismissive, often staying out late without explanation. When he was home, the silence between them was unbearable, filled with all the words that were never said. The love that Amara had quietly harbored for him was never returned, and she felt herself fading into the shadows of his life. One night, Luca came home late, reeking of alcohol and the perfume that wasn't hers. He stumbled into the house, but instead of apologizing, he looked at Amara with a mixture of disdain and regret. "You knew what this was," Luca muttered, slumping into a chair. "You were never her." Amara's heart ached at his words, but she remained silent. She had heard enough. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and Amara felt herself growing weaker. Her body ached, and exhaustion weighed her down more than ever before. At first, she thought it was just the stress of the marriage, carrying the emotional weight of Luca's betrayal, but the truth was far worse. After numerous tests and doctor visits, she was diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer. She was terminal. The news didn't shock her as much as she thought it would. In a strange way, it felt like a release. Amara had lived a life full of sacrifice, quietly bearing the pain of unrequited love and betrayal. Now, she had only a few months left, and instead of clinging to what little life she had left, she decided to let go. Luca, oblivious to her illness, continued his affair with Elena. Amara didn't tell him about the cancer. She didn't feel the need to. Instead, she focused on her own peace, spending her remaining days writing letters she would never send, walking through gardens she would never see again, and dreaming of a love she had never truly received. But one evening, Luca found the doctor's reports. He came to her, his face pale, the paper trembling in his hand. "Amara," he whispered, his voice filled with something she had never heard before, fear. "Why didn't you tell me?" She looked at him, her eyes tired but calm. "Would it have mattered, Luca? You were never mine." For the first time in years, Luca saw Amara for who she really was, the woman who had stood by his side, who had loved him without expecting anything in return, who had quietly endured his cruelty. Guilt consumed him, and he realized, far too late, the depth of her love. "I was wrong," Luca said, his voice breaking. "I've been a fool. I see it now, Amara. I love you. I love you, and I'm so sorry." Amara smiled, but it was a sad smile, filled with the knowledge that it was too late. "Luca, you can't love me just because you're losing me." Tears filled Luca's eyes, but Amara no longer had the strength to comfort him. She had already made peace with her fate. As she grew weaker, Luca stayed by her side, holding her hand, whispering words of love and regret that she could barely hear. But Amara had already left him in her heart. One morning, as the sun rose, Amara quietly slipped away. Luca wept over her still body, knowing that the woman who had truly loved him was gone. He would carry the weight of his mistakes for the rest of his life, but Amara was free, free from the pain, free from the betrayal, and free from the love that had come too late. In the end, Luca realized that sometimes, even when love is found, it can be too late to make things right.